Hi everybody, this is Lara at pureelliottwave.com with something completely different for you today. I just want to buy 2 or 3 shares today. I think the S&P is having a nice downward day and I expect that it may be forming a sustainable low, and so I want to make a very long-term investment. So in order to choose which shares or stocks to buy, I'm going to start off with using relative rotation graphs. Here I'm comparing all of the different sectors to SPY, and when I do this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for sectors that are lagging, that have moved down into this lagging zone and are showing a steady uptick from this. So they're showing some improvement. They're at relatively low levels and they're showing some improvement. And of these two, XLF and XLK, so the financial sector and technology sector, have the best looks. I'm not too sure about this one with its last week of decline, so I'm going to look more closely into these two sectors. Okay, here I'm looking at the technology sector, and of all of these I've just taken all these off. I'm only looking again at stocks that are in the lagging sector but are showing a clear improvement, because then they're going to move through improving to leading and then eventually weakening. That's how they generally rotate around the middle. So in order to try and find something that is at a low level, that is a good buying opportunity, this is how I'm doing it. So I'm going to look at these. I'm going to look at SVB Financial Group, Citigroup, Bank of New York Mellon Corp, State Street Corp, and then when I look in the financial sector, I'm coming up with the same. So I think that these are some good stocks to take a closer look at. So now I'm going to go through these charts that I've prepared earlier for you, and I'm going to look at monthly and then weekly. So I'm looking at a very long-term investment, probably at least 5 years, more like 6 or 7 years. We'll see how the S&P 500 goes. I'm trying to find stocks that are at a relative low, that are a good buying opportunity. So I want to see something that's had a good drawdown. Let's go through these one by one. Bank of New York Mellon Corp. At the monthly chart level, it's had 3 months of strong downward movement after showing some really strong bearish, not very strong, but reasonable bearish divergence between price and RSI. And at that high, ADX only just caught up and indicated that there was an upward trend after this big downward trend it had through here. So given that bearish divergence, has that been resolved, and what does the volume profile look like? The volume profile looks bearish. The last completed downward month showed some decline in volume, but previous to that, we've got this month here showed a strong push from volume. This is a really bearish candlestick pattern as well, and I don't see a bullish candlestick pattern or a bullish lower wick. I notice that at this important low here, and this important low, these candlesticks all have bullish long lower wicks. Here's a nice bullish piercing pattern as well. So it could fall a little bit further to 37.5. On balance volume also has given a bearish signal, but over ADX, overall a steady rise. That's also something I want to see. I want to see a steady increase in its range as it moves higher to give me a better return. So this looks interesting. Let's have a look at the weekly chart level. How's it looking here? At the weekly chart level, the volume profile is also bearish, and this is not correctly a bullish engulfing candlestick pattern, but it did have support from volume, and the close, it's not correctly an engulfing pattern because the open is within the real body of the prior candlestick. So I haven't labeled that a candlestick reversal pattern, but the close is above the open of the prior candlestick, and it had push from volume. So the volume profile here is bearish, but this candlestick for this week does look a little bit bullish. There's resistance now about 44, support about 38. The last signal from on balance volume at the weekly chart level was also bearish. RSI has gone really close to oversold though, and ADX is indicating the downward trend is strong. It's not yet extreme. It could get stronger than this. It got stronger than this back here in this prior downward trend, but it is nearing the negative DX line. If it rises above that DX line, then the downward trend would be considered extreme. And stochastics is very deeply oversold, has been for a few weeks now. ATR is also declining as price falls, so I'm seeing some weakness in this downward movement. Now it certainly could fall again further to a next support is looking reasonably strong, about 38, and I'm not too concerned about trying to time a low. For a very long-term investment of 5 to 7 years, I am not concerned to pick a low. I just want to buy it at a relative low and get the meat in the middle. And so if it does fall a little bit further, I'm not going to be concerned. And finally, the dividend return for this one is 3.02%. It's the lowest bar one of the 5 I'm going to look at, but that's okay. Let's move next to Citigroup, monthly chart. It's got a lot of choppy overlapping movement, hasn't it? Again, we see this bearish divergence. Has this downward movement for these several months been enough to resolve that? RSI is back in neutral territory. ADX is giving a strong bearish signal. It's rising up from low levels below both DX lines, and it's now rising and above 15, telling us there's a new downward trend. The volume profile is bearish as well, and on balance volume gives a bearish signal. This one looks pretty bearish. This certainly could fall further. The last major swing low remains intact, however, on a low and a closing basis. And ATR, this is the only indication of weakness at the monthly chart level in this downward movement. ATR is now starting to fall. What about the shorter term picture for Citigroup? Here's this downward movement. It started out with a strong bearish candlestick pattern. This week we may be seeing a piercing pattern. It's still only midway through the week, so we can't really draw a firm conclusion on that, certainly not on volume. This volume profile is bearish. Volume is pushing price lower here, but for the last few weeks here, volume is starting to be lighter than these prior strong downward weeks. How have the last swing lows ended? Here, a little bit of a volume spike, and here, strong downward volume, but overall volume showed some weakness down to here. That could be happening again. If it falls, if it continues to fall, I'd look for next support about 40, and we might have a bullish candlestick pattern forming here. On balance volume at the weekly chart level gives no signal. RSI is possibly just barely oversold down here, doesn't tend to get there much or remain there long, and at the weekly chart level ADX is now indicating the downward trend is extreme, and stochastics has been oversold for a while, and ATR is flat as price falls. The dividend return for this one is the best, 3.94%. I think this might be one of the 2 or 3. Despite the bearishness of this monthly chart, this might be the one of the 2 or 3 that I purchased today. Let's move on. PNC, Financial Services Group, monthly chart. There's good support here, about 150. That was prior resistance here, and we had an upward breakout, and now a curve back to test support. I would expect the area about 140 to 150 to probably hold, so it's getting really close there. Volume is pushing price lower. RSI is neutral after exhibiting divergence here and here. Between these highs and this high, there's some good strong bearish divergence between price and RSI. And on balance volume, again, another bearish signal. No clear trend from ADX, it hasn't caught up with a potential trend change, and a steady increase in ATR, that's what I want to look for a good investment. So this also could be interesting. Let's see if there's any bullishness at the end of this downward movement on the weekly chart. There is a decline in volume for the last 2 completed downward weeks here. This week is incomplete, so I can't really draw a conclusion here. But these 2 downward weeks did show some decline in volume as price falls. So price is now falling of its own weight. It can continue to do that. A lack of buyers can cause price to fall just as quickly as activity from sellers. Look out for next support at 140. A bearish signal from on balance volume at the weekly chart level, but this is rather weak because this trend line was broken here and here, and then only one test prior to that, so I wouldn't really give that too much weight. And RSI close to neutral, ADX, the downward trend is not extreme and stochastics is oversold, and again ATR showing some decline as price falls. The return on this one is 3.24% for dividends. So again, this looks like a possibly this might be the other one, Citigroup and PNC so far. Let's have a look at the next one, State Street Corp. A lot of choppy overlapping movement on this monthly chart as well, and a really strong bearish candlestick here for this month with support from volume compared to the prior 2 months. No divergence between closing prices at these highs between price and RSI back in neutral territory. Overall, there's been a steady decline in volume, and this concerns me actually. It means that support below is weak. And so if a severe bear market does arrive, this one could fall really fast. On balance volume gives no signal. ADX declining, no clear trend at the monthly chart level, and ATR increasing now as price falls. This one's got a strong fall in price, and at the weekly chart level, there's some bullish divergence between price and on balance volume. But here volume is pushing price lower. Support now about 67. There's a bullish candlestick pattern down here in a hammer, and it did have some support from volume, although that's hard to read because it's a lower session with a lower high and a lower low, but it's closed green, so pretty inconclusive. RSI in neutral territory still. ADX, a downward trend is not extreme, stochastics oversold, and ATR declining as price falls. So a bullish candlestick pattern and bullish divergence, but I'm really concerned at this volume profile on the monthly chart for this one. So maybe not that one. Let's look at the next one, SVB Financial Group. Resistance was at 325, pullback, breakaway, close above resistance, which is now support, moving up and away, coming down. It's about 436, could absolutely certainly fall to about 325 before it finds reasonable support. Volume is pushing it lower here. No bearish divergence at this peak between price and RSI. ADX hasn't caught up with a potential trend change. There's no clear trend, but there is a potential change to down, but no clear trend. And another bearish signal from on-balance volume. So this one's quite bearish. A steady increase, though, in ATR, and I'm not seeing that concerning volume profile here for this one. So this is another possibility. What about the weekly chart level? I'm just a little bit concerned that this one has quite a lot of, it's very thin below. If it wants to keep falling, it could fall quite a lot from about 438 to next support about 260. It could get, not quite, but I don't know, lose about 40% of value before it finds support. Volume is pushing price lower. No signal here from on-balance volume. RSI neutral. ADX indicating a downward trend, stochastics oversold, and ATR showing some increase as price falls. I think maybe not this one. Okay, that was something really different. That's all from me. Just as a conclusion, I'll put that in the description box below the video, and I'll link you through to my website where I will put all of these charts underneath the video after I embed it on my website. So if you want to upload those and have a closer look, then you will be free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for all of your support, and I appreciate your engagement, and thank you so much for the support from my membership.